This is Cheryl Todd of Gun Freedom Radio.
And I'm the other guy, Dan Todd, reminding you that we and the show you are listening to are proud members of the Self-Defense Radio Network.
Find out more and check out all of the other great shows and content at selfdefenseradio.net.
Welcome to Unload and Show Clear, the podcast about all things IDPA. And now, here's your host, a man for whom getting stuck in traffic was the only thing worse than sticking around for day one of nationals, Lloyd Bailey.
Welcome to another episode of Unload and Show Clear, where we counter the media's negative image of gun culture by introducing you to the amazing men and women who are involved in IDPA, International Defensive Pistol Association. We're focusing on people, not politics. The everyday people from all walks of life, men and women who volunteer their time and effort, who spend their hard-earned dollars on travel, match fees, and gear to make this sport great. They're your doctors. They clean your teeth. They're fixing your houses, taking care of your pets. They fix your computers and pilot your planes, and they protect our streets and our nation. They are gun culture at its finest, and it's misunderstood or completely unknown to the mainstream media. Today, I'm going to introduce you to another one of these awesome people. But first, I want to thank today's sponsor. I'm really excited and honored to be able to say that today's show is brought to you by the Blue Bullets. Why am I so excited? Well, for one, the Blue Bullets make cost-effective, quality bullets specifically designed for competitive shooters. Two, they're big supporters of the shooting sports because they're competitive shooters themselves. And three, because I'm a customer and I believe in their products. Using their own polymer-based liquid coating that they mix in-house, Blue Bullets are designed to prevent barrel leading, to reduce smoke, and yet they're priced comparably to other uncoated lead bullets. And unlike uncoated lead bullets, the Blue Bullets are Glock safe. How did they do that? They did that by spending 6 years developing a coating and a process that ensures consistency and quality. I can tell you from my own experience that while I usually don't perform very well at matches, the Blue Bullets never let me down. Visit thebluebullets.com today. Tell them you heard about it on Unload and Show Clear by using this promo code BBUSC at checkout, and you will save 5% off of your order. The Blue Bullets, family owned and operated by competitors who know what you want in competition bullets. Check them out at thebluebullets.com. Our special guest today is Stuart Gepp from Glen Gardner, New Jersey, by way of the United Kingdom. Stuart, welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, Lloyd. How are you?
I'm doing well. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us what you do for a living there in Glen Gardner.
I work for a foreign exchange trading company. I drive a keyboard for a living.
Gotcha.
Looking after computer systems all over the world, which means I never get a moment of peace.
So I was looking at your profile and I was very intrigued. And I knew this would be an interesting conversation, both because we needed a representative from the state of New Jersey, and somehow I end up with a Brit, as you said. It's quite an interesting turn. How did you get interested in guns? Where does your interest in guns come from?
Well, I've always had like an engineering bent. I was my dad's greasy rag for fixing the car from the age of about 6 upwards. Always fascinated in how things work. Forever taking things apart when I was a kid. And there was a special end of the kitchen counter where once I'd taken it apart, I'd put it there and Daddy fix it.
Couldn't figure out how to get it back together?
Absolutely. I'm an awful lot better at it now. But I became interested in guns and shooting when it occurred to me that you've got this tiny little bit of pipe, maybe 3-4 inches long, and you can influence what the bullet's doing 25 yards away. Mm-hmm. And just the mechanics of how all that works, and then the internal workings of the firearm, whether it be a semi-auto or a revolver, it's just fascinating.
Well, a lot of people, when they think of the United Kingdom, obviously they think of the restrictive gun laws, but as you were growing up, it wasn't as restrictive as today. How were you introduced to guns? Was it did you have guns in the home? Was it something that you picked up through some sort of sporting event or hunting? What was the exposure there?
I lived in a tiny little village in the county of Suffolk, which is all agricultural farmland. Mm-hmm. But as a fundraiser every year, we'd hold a village fete for the sports club so we could maintain the tennis court and the football pitch and stuff like that. And one of the stalls that they always had at the fete was an air rifle stand, where you paid however much it was, and you got a target and 5 pellets, and you used a pellet gun to try and get the best score you could. Mm-hmm. And just through sheer luck, my dad was the guy nominated or volunteered to run that stall for year after year. So probably from the age of 12 up, once a year I got to shoot air rifles, because he'd go and borrow some air rifles from various people around the village, keep them at home for a couple of nights before the weekend. And then we'd do the fete on the Saturday, and then it would take him a couple of days to get the air rifles back to people. So while they were at home, I took them into the backyard and tried to wear them out.
So I understand you took up competitive shooting when you were at university. So how did that, talk about that experience and what competitive shooting is like in England at that time?
Yeah, it was about that time I became interested in pistol shooting. The club I joined was mostly focused on the equivalent of the NRA Bullseye match. So I joined the club. I went through all the rigmarole of background checks and applying to the police for a firearms license, and they came to my home and visited and made sure I had the required security arrangements. And then they checked with the club secretary to make sure I actually was a member of this club, so I had a good reason for being allowed to possess a firearm. Passed all of that, and I bought my first pistol. Very first pistol was a Browning high power. Not because of any particular expert knowledge on pistols, it's just that was the service sidearm of the British Army at the time, and I figured if the squaddies couldn't break it, it's good enough for me.
Right. So were the events always just sort of a local thing where members of the club competed against each other, or was there sort of a traveling sort of thing, or?
It was mostly postal matches. So the Small Bore Rifle Association of the UK, which is kind of a specialized part of the NRA, would organize these postal matches, and you used your standard target and shot your cards, sent the targets in to be scored, and at the end of the season they'd tote up everybody's score and say, okay, you're first place Division 4 or fourth place Division 4. So they categorized you depending on your ability. So beginners weren't shooting against experts. Right. And I've got a stack of trophies from all the way down from the bottom division, and then slowly work my way up. If you finished in the top 2 or 3, I think it was, you got promoted to the next division.
Okay.
Each season. So I slowly worked my way up.
And then in 2007, you get a chance to come to the U.S. How did that happen?
That was all work related. I had stopped shooting for quite a while before then, because the rules and the hoops you have to jump through got so onerous it just wasn't worth my time. Plus I'd just started a family, got married. Time was at a premium, and I just didn't have the time to deal with the rigmarole. The job I was doing, it was a consulting role, or a consulting services. I used to work for EDS, Ross Perot's old company, and they had the contract to support this banking network. And that contract came to a close, and they tried to renegotiate a new one, but the pricing wasn't good enough. So the client decided they were going to do it themselves. And I was very fortunate that I was one of the very few people that they decided they wanted to keep my services, and they offered to pay for me to come to the US.
Now, you've moved from the UK to a state in the United States that is, how shall we put it, less than gun friendly. Let's put it that way. That's just maybe the most generous thing I could say. but certainly more friendly than the UK. How did you get introduced to or reintroduced to competitive shooting once you got stateside?
It's something that it helped me make the decision to come over in the first place, because there was no shooting at all left in the UK. You couldn't have any pistol apart from a muzzle loader or a 22. So coming to the States, I saw it as an opportunity to pick that hobby back up, especially with the kids getting older and such. So I was starting to have leisure time again. Obviously, coming over originally, I was on just a work visa, which doesn't entitle me to have firearms in the US. And it took me a while to get my green card sorted out. So that from 2007, I was hoping to pick it up again. 2012, I got my green card. And about 2 months later, I bought my first pistol.
What was the first one you bought?
Over here, it was a Glock 35.
Ah, okay. Now, did you buy that specifically for competition, or was there another reason that one appealed to you?
I'd been researching shooting clubs in the area where I lived and looking at what was available, what I could do, and I found the Somerset County Fish and Game Protective Association had an IDPA section, and it looked really interesting. And so I started watching YouTube videos and went, "Oh, that looks so much fun."
A little different from Bullseye.
Very different from Bullseye. Yeah, like you're moving and the targets are moving. Cool. So I started looking into what gun would be a good fit for that style of shooting. Did some research on reloading, because I used to hand load back in the UK, so I knew how to do it. And I found a fair amount of information that with a good hand load, you can actually make a 40 shoot softer than a factory 9.
Right.
So I thought, this seems to be working out as kind of a good fit. So that's what I bought.
So talk about that first experience, the first IDPA experience. What was it like, the first local IDPA match that you went to at your local club?
It was a really, really nicely put together match. Good friend of mine, Tom Richards, was the match director, and he was famous for having a beginner-friendly IDPA match. Mm-hmm. The first match was a bit of a blur. There was an awful lot going on. I knew how to handle a firearm safely, so I wasn't too worried about that. I do hear a lot of new shooters going, "Oh, I hope I don't DQ." And I always take them aside and say, "Well, I would really like you to have higher aspirations than that."
Yes. Aim just a bit higher than, yes, not putting holes in things that shouldn't have holes in them.
Yeah. Let's aim for putting all your shots on the targets. Let's go with that. Accuracy-wise, I didn't have an awful lot of difficulty because I was a bullseye shooter.
Right.
Shooting quickly, I had no clue how to achieve that. So I was getting lots of zeros, but my times were extraordinarily long.
What did you do from that point to improve those other aspects of your game?
Just practiced. Tom ran a practice night once a month, and we ran a match at Somerset once a month. We're lucky around here. If you're willing to travel up to an hour or so, you can shoot a match every weekend.
Okay.
And it was a case of setting goals to try and encourage myself to get that bit better. So it started out, I wanted to win one stage anywhere. Giving myself those goals, and then it was like, oh, can I get 2 stage wins in a match?
Right.
And just slowly working up, doing practice, getting to the range on my own time, and just running reloads or running follow-up shots, just to get trigger time and improve.
How long after that before you decided you were ready to try a sanction match?
The first sanction match I shot, I did appallingly bad at because my nerves got way the better of me, and I wasn't concentrating terribly well. It was a match that Tom Richards invited me to, said, "You really ought to do this. You'll be good at this. Come see a big match." So we went and shot that, and I think I came something like 5th out of the sharpshooters, and there might have been 7 of them altogether.
Right. And that didn't discourage you, though?
No, I knew I could do better. I knew that I was letting my nerves get ahead of me. I knew I was screwing up stage planning, not even following the course of fire correctly, shooting targets out of order, stuff like that.
Coming from a background of bullseye shooting, where it's really a great focus on the fundamentals of manipulating the gun, there's not a whole lot of stage planning that there's a mental aspect to it, of course, but in a different way. How long did it take to sort of figure out the mental part of action pistol shooting?
I don't know. I'll let you know when I've achieved it.
It's kind of what I figured your answer would be, but but how did you learn, I guess, to game plan?
By watching other people. I picked up my SO certificate. Crikey, how long ago was that now? Must be 6 years ago, something like that. And then I started working sanction matches. And that was a real education to watch so many different people come through and shoot the same couple of stages that I was working, and all the different approaches, what tips or what little nuances they added to their plan here. Somebody else approached it a slightly different way. Scheduling their reloads, choosing to do a attack load instead of letting the gun run dry. It was just really eye-opening to see other people thinking out their stages and then watching them execute them, and being there to see all the different people and how their approaches worked differently for different people with different abilities, because some people move faster than others, some people are more accurate than others. And you get to see, okay, so what he's doing, I think that might work for me. That other guy over there, what he's doing is never going to work for me because I just can't do that.
You are now, let me look here. You are now a master in SSP and expert in CDP, ESP, CCP, carry optics, and bug. Which of those divisions do you like the most? What's your favorite and why?
My new favorite is ESP.
Okay.
But that's mostly because I've finally got my 9mm 1911, and it just shoots so sweetly that it's too much fun to do anything else.
What are you shooting?
Springfield Range Officer.
All right, so that leaves PCC and revolver. If you were going to choose one of those two to become a master in, which would you prefer?
Definitely revolver.
Interesting.
The skills to run a revolver quickly is completely different from running a semi-auto. I'm sure you would agree.
Yes, absolutely. Do you have a particular memory of a match that you competed in over those past 7 years that sticks out in your mind? Something that you're either look back at and laugh, or you look back at with a sense of accomplishment?
Tricky question. I wasn't expecting that one.
Should have listened to more episodes.
I should have. I am remiss. I apologize.
No.
Find me later. From the observation standpoint, I was working the Beast of the East match in Easton one time, and one of the match directors, John, had built a frame and mounted a kayak on it, which was all suspended on springs, so the kayak wobbled around all over the place. So next squad comes through for their walkthrough, and an extreme character in the shooting sports, AJ Stuart, was in this particular squad. And he went, "Oh my God!" And he immediately ran over to it and jumped on it and bounced on it like a trampoline. He seemed to be in a particularly happy mood that day. So it came to be his turn to shoot on the second stage in our bay. And my girlfriend was running him. She's also an SO, obviously. But she was a very new SO at that point. And AJ has an awful lot of energy. It's indescribable how much energy this man has. And he's kind of bouncing and hopping foot to foot. And it got to the point that the Sandy turned to him and said, "I'm really sorry, but can you stop doing that? You're scaring me." and poor AJ, he was heartbroken. He had no idea that he was having this effect on her, and it was so sorry that he had upset her.
What about from the accomplishment standpoint?
Making master in SSP was the best one. I was going through some life changes at the time, separating from my then wife, and one of the things you have to be very careful of, especially in New Jersey, is ex-spouses frequently use the tactic to complain to a judge that you've threatened them or made them scared, and then they come and take all your guns away. So to preempt that, I had got rid of all my guns so that they didn't wind up in the bottom of a police locker somewhere, scratching themselves and doing whatever else they do to them. So I was actually shooting the match with a borrowed gun.
Oh, wow.
Fortunately, it was a Glock 34, so remarkably similar to the 35 I was running regularly anyway.
Right.
And John Schaefer, the guy who lent it to me, he was good enough to give me his match ammo as well, which I think is about 125.3 power factor.
Just a sniff over the limit. Right.
Just about. So this thing ran like a sewing machine. It barely moved. And I managed to make SSP master.
That's awesome. Now, to get back to, we were talking about this off air earlier, you have experienced sort of the Europe's gun laws at maybe their worst, and the United States gun laws at, it's debatable, running neck and neck with California.
They're in competition.
Yes, absolutely.
Our present governor has actually stated that he wants to become California.
Oh, God. Gee whiz. Talk about, because you experienced, you started shooting competitively in the UK in 94. 2 years later, you have Dunblane, and then within a year, what changed, and what was the next 10 years like?
The media and the political climate was astonishing. I had never even considered that I would be labeled a murderer simply because I possessed firearms. But that's exactly what certain newspapers in the UK were doing. I was also relatively ignorant of how the political system works. Mm-hmm. So after Dunblane, both the major parties in the UK, the Conservative Party and the Labour Party, they both said, let's wait for Lord Cullen's report on exactly what happened here, and then we will come up with some legislation to deal with whatever he identifies. Mm-hmm. The pressure from the press was so great that both parties capitulated on that and decided to introduce legislation before Lord Cullen was finished, and we had the pistol ban. The way the system worked in the UK up until then is you couldn't illegally have a gun without a license, and the license actually listed every gun that you had purchased, in make, model, serial number, the works. So when they decided to take them all away, they knew exactly what you had and where to find them.
Right.
So there was no hiding anything. There was no, oh, I'll hand these ones in, but I'll keep one buried in the backyard, because they're going to go, where's that one?
Right. No, there was no claiming it had been lost in a boating accident, as we joke about here in the U.S.
Indeed, even though we're an island and we have sea all around.
So overnight, the guns that you were using in competition were labeled as tools for murder and banned. So you were unable to compete for 10 years until you got a chance to come back to the U.S., right?
Not strictly. In 88, there was another shooting in England at Hungerford. Mm-hmm. And a guy shot a whole bunch of people. And at that point, the government decided that it was a good idea to ban semi-automatic rifles, even though he had killed most of his victims with a pistol. Self-loading rifles, apart from 22 rimfire, were already illegal.
Okay.
They had just banned all pistols apart from muzzle loaders and air pistols. But a lot of us still wanted to shoot. And at that point, as well as bullseye, I was also doing PPC, piece pistol.
Right.
So we had reloading presses. We're all shooting 38s. Well, we can just get underlever carbines and adapt the competitions to using a rifle.
Mm-hmm.
So we did.
Okay.
It was somewhat less interesting because it's a darn sight easier to shoot with a rifle than it is with a pistol, obviously.
Right.
But also for that kind of pistol caliber rifle, like we couldn't have an AR type rifle because it's semi-auto and it's a centerfire cartridge, can't have it. So it had to be manually operated. So there were pretty much 3 rifles to choose from in 38 through 57. There was a Rossi, there was a Marlin, and there was a Winchester. Now, part of the fun prior to that is people showed up at the gun club and somebody would have an H&K, somebody would have a Smith & Wesson, there was a huge variety of guns, and like, do you want to have a go on this one? Do you have a go on that one? When everybody's got the same gun, it's less interesting to do that.
Right.
I also, at that time, met the woman that was going to be my wife, and I moved to the other side of the country, which meant I had to go through the licensing procedure all over again, because every time you change county that you live in, you have to now apply to the new county police force and go through the rigmarole and find a gun club in that county that you could be a member of to give you the requirement of why you want to have a gun in the first place. And it just got so onerous, I just said, sod it. And I sold all the guns and gave up shooting until I got over here in 2012.
Contrast and compare what New Jersey is like to, let's say, obviously not the UK post Dunblane, but maybe post Hungerford.
Post Hungerford, any self-loading long gun was not allowed. So
okay.
For a start, Jersey's way ahead on that one.
Right.
The licensing system is pretty much the same. To buy a pistol in New Jersey, you have to have a New Jersey pistol permit. It's a pistol purchase permit.
Right.
And you have to apply for a separate one for every pistol you want to buy. And it also doubles as a form of register. So any pistol that you buy in New Jersey is automatically registered. So if they were to decide to go down that path, they could identify, find, and remove all of the handguns owned by people that bought them in New Jersey. The general law in New Jersey is you can't have a gun. It states that right at the beginning. You can't have a gun. And then they carve out various exceptions to that.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't have a gun unless you're a police officer. You can't have a pistol unless you're at home or at the range or traveling directly to the range from your home
mm-hmm.
or traveling directly to a gunsmith. But if you want to deviate and pick your friend up from another town, no dice, because you're not traveling directly then.
Do the restrictive laws in New Jersey, how do they affect IDPA? How do they affect your ability to travel and to compete?
The big one is you're only allowed to be in possession of your unloaded cased firearm traveling directly to or from the range. So if you're traveling any distance, stay outside of Jersey overnight and come in just for the event and then leave again. Because if you stay in a hotel, you're not traveling directly to and from any longer, and you're open to prosecution.
As a shooter, getting back to your own personal shooting career, what would you say, having picked up IDPA just in, you've been shooting, you started shooting competitively quite a while back, but you only started shooting action pistol since 2012. What in that time period has been the biggest change? What do you do now that you didn't do back then? What do you do? What is something that that you did back then that you don't do now?
I think the biggest idea that I got into my head, and it took me a long while to do it, probably because of the shooting the bullseye for so long, is the idea of a good enough sight picture. You don't have to have the front sight exactly centered in the rear notch for every shot. If you're 5 yards from a target, if you can see the front sight anywhere in the rear notch, it's a 0. Being willing to pull the trigger before the sight picture has settled down to a perfect sight picture was a mental hurdle that it took me a long while to get over.
So what would you say at this point is the strongest the strongest part of your game as a shooter, and what do you still work really hard to improve? What do you think you need the most improvement at?
The thing that I've pretty much nailed is manipulation of the weapon.
Mm-hmm.
If it runs dry, I know just by feel. I don't need to look to see if the slide's back. I just know that it ran dry.
Mm-hmm.
And the initiating a magazine change is subconscious. It just happens.
Right.
Placing a shot on a target is to the point now where it's subconscious. So I decide I need to put a bullet there, and the gun does it for me.
Mm-hmm.
What I have to work on still is stage planning, actually concentrating on my stage plan while I'm executing it. Because, I can come up with a stage plan, but then I get distracted running the match and doing various other things. And then it comes my turn to shoot, and I go, what was I going to do again?
As we wrap up here, what is it about IDPA that you love? What is it that makes it so much fun for you that you would not only devote your time to getting better as a shooter, but also to taking over for your club as match director and designing stages and running matches and working as an SO? What is it that keeps you coming back and shooting IDPA? What is it you love about this sport?
It's infinitely more fun than standing in a port shooting a target that's not moving. The variation that you can introduce with different stage designs, different props, different actuators, target, like pop-ups, drop turners, swingers. Actually, one thing I need to get out of storage and start using again is we've got an MGM Charger in the club, which is a really fun target. If you're not familiar, it's basically a little trolley on tracks with a spring-loaded cable, and it charges 21 feet directly at you in about 2 seconds.
Those are fun. Well, Stuart, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. You've spent a lot of time, and I really do appreciate all the additional time that you've given us here, and I really appreciate you joining us. It was great to get a chance to talk to you, and I hope I get a chance to meet you on the range down the road.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right, I want to thank today's guest for coming on the show and sharing his story. He was very generous with his time, and the interview ran longer than normal. So if you would like to hear the full-length interview, join us on Patreon, and you'll get access to all the extra content. You could hear the rest of the interview, plus full-length interviews from guests like Bob Vogel and Julie Golub. Sign up for just $1 a month to support the show, and you get access to all these special episodes at unloadpodcast.com/extra. Thank you again for listening. Tune in again next time for another episode of Unload and Show Clear.